hometown guy at UFC Charlotte coming up this weekend. He switched the nickname, he switched the weight class. It's Bryan the Butcher Battle. He's going to be taking on gifted Gabe Green. And when you look at a fight like this, I mean, Bryan Battle laid it out on a platter in an interview that he did with JHK in the All-Star MMA, basically saying that Gabe Green is a guy that relies on his toughness. He's known for his toughness. Why do you get that moniker? Because you get hit a lot. And that kind of is a little bit of the truth. But when you look at a matchup like this, Matt, Bryan Battle's one of those guys that can battle through the adversity. And if you look at it going into his last fight, 9-fight win streak, including the wins that he had on The Ultimate Fighter, before he ended up winning season 29, getting that win over Gilbert Urbina, where he was down in the first round, and he rallied back and beat him in the second round, just like his fight against Andre Petroski, just like a lot of Bryan Battle matchups. And Battle also kind of mentioned, if you look and go down through his record, I know he'd fought Cody Brundage as an amateur, but the last time that Battle fought in Charlotte, he got a decision win over Impa Kasanganay in the amateurs, and he was able to out-wrestle him in that fight. So for Battle coming into this one, his second fight at welterweight, and I guess there were a lot of conversations for both of these guys going into their respective last fights. For Battle, it was, okay, second fight at welterweight. First one was over in the blink of an eye. He finishes Takashi Sato. He gets that big-time bonus, and all of a sudden, he's a slight underdog against Rinat Fakhretdinov. But at the end of that one, we were left with even more questions than we were answers.
Do you know what I keep on going back to? Because you had brought it up. It is a real skill check to see how tough Gabe Green is, right? Like, that's what all of his fights are. He's aggressive. He throws power shots. He's going to eat some power shots as a result. But you're not only testing his toughness, your toughness is going to get tested too. And like you had said, with Bryan Battle being at 170, I don't doubt that, A, he's the bigger guy physically. He might even have more power in this matchup. But how is he going to do eating those power shots of Gabe Green? Because that is the double-edged sword that you do face when you fight a guy like Green. Look at what happened with Garry his last time out. He was able to land his shots effectively and then evade some of the bigger looping shots of a guy like Gabe Green. The difference between Bryan Battle and Garry, though, is Garry does move well on his feet. Now, yes, he does get overconfident in some areas, and he will eat some shots. We saw that his last time out. He ate some big shots, but Bryan Battle is a much more stationary fighter than a guy like Garry is, so we're really curious to see how Bryan Battle fights this fight, because if his feet are behind those two black lines, there's a good chance Gabe Green just dusts him, because Gabe Green is a very aggressive guy. He wants that fight to be him pushing Bryan Battle up against the cage, being the aggressive guy, really making him feel his pressure. So I'm going to be very curious to see how Bryan Battle deals with the pressure that he will face in this matchup.
Well, it's interesting, and as I said, kind of some big ticket items going into their last fights. Battle with the welterweight move. He's taking on Fakhretdinov. He gets taken down over and over and over again. And in the third round, Battle got dropped. And it was weird because he was orthodox. He switched southpaw. He faked the 1-2. Then he went to land the 1-2 with the leg kick. And there was a right cross that met him. And he got dropped like a sack of potatoes. So when you look at it for Gabe Green, again, big picture items. He had the corrective eye surgery before the Garry fight. He had the heart issue where he got kicked in the heart in training. He had to kind of get back from that one. All three judges scored at 30-27. That kind of like short, in-close right hand from me and Garry that dropped Green in the third round of that matchup. But Gabe Green getting ready for this one. I mean, that's the interesting thing. We know him as a sub-fighter guy. He's out of CMMA with Victor Henry, the Josh Barnett gym, so on and so forth. There's pictures of him on his Instagram training at Ruka Sport with one Daryl Christian. And I thought, Daryl Christian, I know that name. Who's he trained? He was a wrestling coach for TJ Dillashaw. He's a friend of Chael Sonnen. He's a guy that trained with Kyle Dake, who beat Jordan Burroughs in pure wrestling. Like, Daryl Christian is one of those guys in wrestling. So then now I'm thinking, and this is me thinking out loud, is Gabe Green going to try and wrestle against Bryan Battle? Because we've seen Green be successful with his wrestling. You know, he's a much better volume striker on the outside, mixing in some of his power shots. If he's going to wrestle against Bryan Battle, that opens up a lot of the jiu-jitsu battle. And you might think, Craig, that's a stupid thing to say based off of what Fakhretdinov was able to do. However, watch the other Battle fights. Against guys that leave some openings in their wrestling, that's where Battle's able to kind of pull away with some of those submissions that he has in his back pocket. So for Gabe Green, getting ready for this matchup, I'm eager to see which version of him we get, because he's done some interviews as well, one with JHK MMA and the All-Star as well. Like, just put them together. But you look at a guy like Gabe Green and you look at his Instagram as well, a lot of strength and conditioning. And we saw that kind of come back to bite Joseph Holmes last weekend, coming in at 189, talking a lot about his strength and conditioning. But Gabe Green right now looks like a physical specimen. And we'll see how it goes, because they both have wonky cardio. I think Gabe Green's a steadier guy.
It's a weird must-win fight is all I want to say. Because the Ultimate Fighter is in a very weird place right now. I think everybody who watches this channel would agree with me on that. I think you'd agree with me on that. It's not the, ranked fighter, championship fighter breeding ground that it once was. So for Bryan Battle, he still does have a fairly big name coming off that show. He does have a good amount of hype behind him, or at least initially. So for him, you'd hate to say, oh, you lose to Gabe Green, there's not a spot for you in the UFC, right? Because if that's the case, then we can get rid of a lot of the welterweight division. But it is kind of a must-win because, like you had said, there's a lot of people with a bad taste left in their mouth over Bryan Battle and his last performance. So if he's not able to look good against a guy like Gabe Green, it is going to leave people wondering, okay, what is his overall ceiling? And is he going to keep on fighting at 170? If he loses this, could that kind of be the, okay, now we have to move back up to 185 wake-up call he needs?
Yeah, I mean, Bryan Battle started his amateur career in 2017 at heavyweight at 241, exactly. And now he's at welterweight. And if you do look at it, Battle does have that big advantage, 3 inches in height, 4 inches in reach. Gabe Green, I mean, similar kind of matchup when he took on Ian Garry, had a hard time closing the distance.
Johan Linus was huge, too.
Linus was huge, but Phil Rowe actually had 5 inches of height and 7.5 inches of reach, and Green was able to drop him twice with leg kicks, and once he got in on the inside, that's where Green was able to pull away.
It's weird that Green has fought so many guys bigger than him, because he is not a small welterweight by any means. I know he's not the tallest guy in the world, but he is a very muscular guy. Like you had mentioned, he does look very filled out right now.
We'll see how this one goes. If you look at it, Gabe Green, slight favorite in the matchup. We throw it on over to the Tapology vote. Surprise to us there, to you. People weren't on Battle coming into the UFC. People thought he was going to lose to Tresean Gore. Then he was all the hotness for Gabe Green. I think he's steady with the fans. I don't know if anybody's got Gabe Green posters on their wall.
He's like an outside the rankings gatekeeper. I know that's a weird position to be in, but I like Gabe Green fighting a lot of prospects because, again, if they beat him, you do know where they sit. They're going to eat some big shots. They have to have good cardio. But if you lose to Gabe Green, it is going to be interesting to see what your ceiling is.
I'm going to say over under 65% Gabe Green.
I think they'll be over, personally.
They're going to be over. They're, whoa!
Other way.
588 total votes, 72% Battle, 77% by decision. For the 28% that have Green, 79% by decision. I guess that should be, maybe everybody in Charlotte and North Carolina is voting for Bryan Battle on that one. I don't know, but when you look at it for Battle, he does a good job with his long-range weapons. He does get tagged in some of his fights, but he has that stick-to-itiveness, even in the fight against Fakhretdinov. I liked one thing out of the third round. He got back up at the very end, only to get taken down in the last 30 seconds. So Battle was still trying to fight for position, still trying to get up after he was completely toast in that one. Got taken down on 7 of 9 attempts, and he was controlled for 14 minutes and 11 seconds in that one. But when you look at a matchup like this, Matt, for me, I do like Green with the volume, and I like Green with the overall game plan in the matchup.
I agree with you. Would you agree with me on this assessment of the fight? I think Green's going to win it unless he loses it. Like, his aggressiveness, his volume, I think is enough to overwhelm a guy like Battle, and I do think him being that kind of in-your-face fighter is enough to eliminate some of those long-range weapons. The problem is, though, if he does start to get overconfident, if he is just walking into shots from that long range, he could easily land, or Bryan Battle, could easily land a big straight shot down the middle, stun Gabe Green, and get a finish after that. So I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if Bryan Battle is able to get the win, but I do have Gabe Green in the matchup.
Both guys training at some big-time gyms. Green working out at King's MMA with Benil Dariush, Bryan Battle with Keith Richardson, and some of the guys out of that Central Coast MMA. So when you're looking at it, both of us going with gifted Gabe Green in the matchup. Let us know who you have down below in the comments section. Some big fights in this card, including Almeida looking to challenge Jairzinho Rozenstruik up the top. You're not going to want to miss any of it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.